Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Aomway Commander V2 FPV goggles. Now, these are the production version, and from what I can tell there have been a couple of changes from the initial ones that were sent out, so I'm going to be reviewing these as a fresh model. Now, I can actually only find two problems with these goggles, and neither of them are anything to do with the hardware or the software. In fact, I go as far to say that the goggles are pretty flawless and they are incredibly feature-packed. The first problem with this goggle is its price. It's 117 quid or $150 more than the original version. And to me, if you come out with a V2 of something, then it should be comparable in price to the V1. Otherwise, just call it something else. You know, the reason the V1s were so popular at the time was because they seriously undercut the price of the competition. So people saw the reviews and were happy to take the plunge because they were such a saving against buying Fat Sharks. But now we have the V2 and it's more expensive than the Fat Shark HD3 Cores, and it's not too far off the price of the Fat Shark HDOs. So I think Aomway has outpriced themselves with this product. So that brings me on to the second problem with Aomway, and that is their unknown customer service. So I actually think that it is a better goggle than the HD3s. In fact, feature-wise, they're better than the HDOs as well. But the reason why people will still choose Fat Shark is that Fat Shark has a renowned customer service, and FPV goggles are a product that do eventually fail. Now, I kind of feel that this criticism is a bit unfair because I've never tried to use Aomway's customer service, and that's not because they don't break either. You know, this technology breaks, take it from me. They are actually all of the same components inside. There's only a couple of panels to choose from, and you know, they are all repurposed from other products, and it's the same with the DVR. So it's only really the software that sets them apart. And the Aomways haven't broken because I don't use them as much as the Fat Sharks. So I want to throw this one out to you guys because there must have been some people who have used Aomway's customer service, and I'd love to hear in the comments what the experience was like. Now, I found a customer service page on Aomway's website, but all it really shows is that they are based in China, and of course Fat Shark has repair centers dotted all over the globe. But I'd still be interested to hear your stories because, you know, if it's been a good customer service experience, then maybe the high premium price of these goggles is worth that extra cost. That's certainly why you go with Fat Sharks. You know, but from my experience of the Fat Shark customer service to this date, I've only ever had to cover the cost of the postage to send the goggles locally, and you know, anytime there's been an issue with the goggle, they've replaced the broken parts free of charge. So really, Aomway are competing with that. And before you ask, I always use a private email with any customer service, so they never know that it's Andy RC or whatever. Otherwise, I could not give a proper review of the service. Anyways, if you have considered those hurdles and are still interested in this goggle, then I'll tell you why they are a better product than the HD3s. The first one is the field of view, so it's slightly higher than the HD3s at 45 degrees, and they are, as far as I can tell, the same 800 by 600 LCD panels that are found in the HD3s. Now, the only other goggle that I've tried above 42 degrees was the HD2s, and I couldn't get a clear image out of those. So when you go up in field of view, the adjustment margin for your eyes becomes smaller, so you really have to have a genetic sweet spot to get a clear image with the larger field of view. And with the 45 degree, I'm actually getting a clear image with no blurring, but I do think it's just on the limit, as there's a sweet spot with the IPD, and I think think that has something to do with it as well, because the IPD on this goggle is slightly higher than the Fat Shark, so I can push the IPD out to the side a little further and I get a clear image. And while on the subject of the IPDs, they move independently and they sit in place really well. But just like all my other goggle reviews, I will put the warning here and say that everybody is different when it comes to goggles, and I know some people that can't use Fat Sharks at all because they can't get their eyes lined up regardless of the field of view, and then there are others who get a perfect image with the HD2s. So, you know, all I can say is that if you can, then try a bunch of different goggles before you buy them. So the next reason why these goggles are better than the Fat Sharks, and this is such a big one for me, is that they have a switching aspect ratio, and they've done it perfectly as well, because it's a 4:3 native screen, and then in 16:9 it crops the top off rather than the sides. So in both cases you don't lose the horizontal field of view, and for FPV this is the way to do it in my opinion, because if you look at the native 16:9 screens, you lose a lot of field of view in the 4:3 mode. So for me, this is the best of both worlds, and I think every goggle should be doing this at this point. So to change the aspect ratio of the screens, there's a very simple menu, and this is another way that Aomway has nailed it for me, because they have packed a load of features into this goggle, but they've also made it really simple. So it's a long press of this joystick on the top here, and then a menu pops up in the screens, and from there we can change the band or the channel. But you can see where it says mode, they have given a bunch of options. So as well as a 4:3 mode, there's a 4:3 zoom, and while this method is wasting a few pixels, it does mean that if the field of view is a little bit too extreme for you, then they have reduced the field of view to around about 42 degrees using the software. So, you know, it's not the end of the world if the 45 degrees is above your limit. So there's also a 3D mode and a HDMI-in mode. Now, unfortunately, the HDMI-in is stuck at a 4:3 aspect ratio, and most HDMI sources are 16:9, so if you are looking at this goggle for its HD capabilities, then actually the HD3s do a better job, because they do switch to 16:9 in the HDMI mode. Funnily enough, the HDOs don't. I think that's something that they've missed. And I have no doubt that after Aomway see this, that they will sort out another mode, you know, but the making of this video, for HDMI, it's stuck in 4:3. And it accepts 720p at 60 Hz for HDMI, but for 1080p, it only accepts 30 Hz, so I thought that was important to note. So if I tab along again, we have HDMI 3D, and then we have the AV-in 16:9, and there's also a 16:9 zoom function as well. So I think you'll agree those modes are just awesome and should be on every single goggle on the market. And then from this menu we can also change the brightness and contrast, as well as turning off the RF mode so that we can use the AV-in. You can also just select the left or the right antenna if you don't want to use diversity. And this is the non-head tracker version, but you can turn that on or off, and you can set an alarm, which is really useful for your battery. So, you know, it will start beeping after a certain time if you leave the battery plugged in. And you can change the volume of the headphone jack. Now, this next one is an interesting option. It's called Div RF mode, and we have FPV race or long range as the options, and unfortunately there's no information detailing what they do. My guess would be that the FPV race is a normal switching diversity mode, and the long range mode is doing something else, maybe with the RSSI. But Aomway, if you are listening, we need more info on what this is doing, because it does not mention it in the manual. But yeah, I really like this menu. It is simple and functional, and that top joystick also adjusts the brightness and contrast if you do short presses to the side. And I think if you do like a double long press, so the first long press takes you into the menu, but then if you keep holding it, you'll get a second beep, and that will actually turn the RF modules off as well. So, you know, it's got another function there. Now, I haven't talked much about the casing yet, and that's because the shape hasn't really changed that much from the V1s. The material has changed, though, and I'm sad to say that it does look a little bit cheap and plasticky compared to the V1s. But importantly, it doesn't let any light in, and it does its job. So I think that's all I'll say on the casing. And we have this extra compartment at the top here, but mine's just empty. It does have a little ribbon cable in there, but that's for the head tracker if you buy the Pro version. As for the fitment on my face, I find them really comfy. I do get a slight pressure on my nose compared to the Fat Sharks, but that brings me onto something often missed when talking about this goggle, and that is their weight. They are very lightweight on the face compared to the competition, and it's one of the main benefits of having the RX modules built into the goggle. So when you are wearing them, it's very easy on your neck and your head. And we have the 3-point harness here to ensure that they fit your face securely, and then the faceplate. And the strap is better than the Fat Sharks as well. I tend to find that the straps on the Fat Sharks get completely ruined by the Velcro on the faceplate. So yeah, this has got Velcro as well, and we've got this soft foam, and you're given a spare one of those. And you can see that the battery is designed to sit at the back of the strap as well. Now, a downside of this package is that the goggle doesn't come with a battery, and again, I think for the price that it should. So I'm using the Eachine EV200D battery here because it's got this long cable instead. But just like the V1s, they give you this LiPo adapter, and you can just plug your LiPo straight into it, and it's got a DC connector on it as well. And yes, there's no power button. I think power buttons are a stupid idea unless the battery is built into the goggle, but I know it's a hot topic with these goggles. I don't want a power button. I'm fine just plugging the goggles in. Now, you'll notice that I've got my diopters in there. So yes, they fit the Fat Shark diopters, same as the V1s for those who are short-sighted. But anyways, back to the functions, and on the top we have the channel and band button. So a short press of this goes through the 8 individual channels, and those do appear on the screen along with the frequency, which is nice. Oh, I should mention as well, just while on the subject of the channel and the band button, I think the initial versions, when you pressed it, changed the channel instantly, but now it's a press and then it flashes the on-screen display up on the screen, but then you have to press it again in order for it to change anything. So I think that's something that they've changed against the initial versions that were sent out. And then a long press will change the bands. It's a little bit fiddly, and you know, it does disappear off the screen, so you know, it's not on there all of the time. It's just when you're pressing the buttons. And then a even longer press of that button will do an auto scan, and I would rather use the manual selection rather than auto search. But you know, some of those diversity modules out there, they have a band scanner. This isn't really like that. But it does support 64 channels, and you don't have to buy anything separately to get video into the goggles, you know, like the Fat Sharks. You have to have a separate module. And it does, of course, mean that you can't use any of the aftermarket modules unless you're using something like the Dock King and then use the AV-in. By the way, the AV-in also acts as AV-out when the RF modules are turned on. So lastly, we have the DVR, and there's not too much to say about it really, because it's the same DVR found in most FPV goggles. They have changed the resolution though. It's 720 by 480, which is actually the wrong resolution for a 4:3 aspect ratio. So I'm not sure why they have gone with that. Maybe it's to squeeze a little bit more horizontal resolution, but the result of that is an incorrect aspect ratio, which can be corrected in an editor, of course. and it's running a bitrate of 13 megabits, so consistent with this DVR running in other goggles, and it saves as an AVI. I think it does 25 frames per second in PAL and 30 frames per second in NTSC, and it has a built-in supercap, so if you pull your battery then it'll save you recording, so it's a great feature. And the reception of it is very good, so when I took it behind the trees, it did perform as well as the True Diversity module, which I thought was nice. But other than that, yeah, it's a long press of the DVR button to initiate the DVR, and then you get a blue recording icon in the top corner of the screen, and then it's a single press to start the recording, and then the icon will flash blue. Now, personally, I prefer Fat Shark's solution of a red LED in the center of the goggle, because the record icon is always there, but it's not a big deal. Just make sure that you don't have your on-screen display with your cockpit in the top corner, and then it won't interfere with it. And it's a even longer press of the DVR button to go into the playback menu, and then you can do all of your usual things in there, such as fast forward and rewind, etc. One thing I like about this DVR is that you don't have to turn the RF module off in order to go into the playback, so I thought that was nice compared to the Fat Sharks. And it's a small thing, really, but I like the recess on the micro SD card. It makes it really easy to get the card out, and it's in a nicer position than the Fat Sharks, I think. And we also have the headphone jack next to that as well. So we also have the head tracker button, which if you short press starts the internal defogging fan, but unfortunately there doesn't seem to be a way to stop the fan once it's going, but it does turn off after 10 minutes or so, and of course you can unplug the battery and that'll stop it as well. So that's pretty much everything covered. You are given a manual in the box as well as an AV cable. The goggle also comes with the Aomway cloverleaf antenna, which is one of my favorite antennas out there, and you are given a patch as well, and both of those are SMA. And it also comes with this nice pouch to keep the goggles in. And to conclude, these are probably the best all-round goggles on the market at the making of this video. And I do think the OLED screen of the HDO will give a better picture. And going back to the start of this video, I think the limiting factor with these goggles is the price and the unrivaled customer service from Fat Shark. But you know, if you can get past that, then I do think you'll have a good experience with this goggle, and perhaps it might be worth paying attention to the price of these units, because I think it's going to have to come down for people to buy into them. So until then, I will leave it there, and as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.